Hello and good morning. My name is Jeff Stauffer, Community Relations Director with Elville and Associates, and welcome to our webinar today featuring Eric Jorgensen, founder of Special Needs Navigator. Today we'll be discussing putting it all together, the diagnosis to adulthood guide of navigating the disability world. How this will work today, if you're new to our webinar series, if so, welcome, we're glad you're here. And if you're returning to us, welcome back. You are in listen-only mode. However, if you have questions, and we really want to encourage you to ask questions throughout, don't be shy as your questions help others learn. Please type them in the questions panel on your screen, and we'll pause during the presentation to respond to them, as well as leave time at the end. You did receive the presentation by email from me yesterday for your convenience to take notes on it if you wish. Eric also provided some resources for you I sent out to you as well. For CFPs, CPAs, and other professionals on today's webinar, you may receive 1.5 continuing education hours for attending. For attendance records requirements on my end, please email me your board ID. And for CFPs only, I also need the last 4 digits of your social security number as soon as possible so I can submit my required reporting to get your CE approved. Everyone will also receive a post-webinar feedback email right after the presentation, and we do ask that you take just a couple minutes to fill out this simple survey to offer us your feedback about the presentation, and we really appreciate your feedback. We read every comment and value your feedback. Elville and Associates works every day with families, with loved ones with intellectual and developmental disabilities with the ideals of collaboration, education, and compassion in mind. And we're always available for free consultations to discuss your family's needs. And we always look forward to being a resource to you in any way, now or in the future, whenever you're ready. So it's my pleasure to welcome our presenter, Mr. Eric Jorgensen of Special Needs Navigator. And I'd like to provide a proper introduction for him. Eric has been helping families with loved ones with intellectual and developmental disabilities since his retirement from the Navy in 2012. He was widowed the same year he retired, and it was his frustration with the difficulty of navigating services that led him to create the role of IDD Navigator. In addition to directly serving his clients through one-on-one consultations, Eric offers many free and low-cost resources on his website, which I've been on, and it is very comprehensive. Families looking for more information should check out the Special Needs Navigator YouTube channel and his podcast, ABCs of Disability Planning. Additionally, from now until March 31st, parents and professionals have the option to sign up for Waypoints for free. Waypoints is a monthly newsletter and Q&A doing a deep dive into topics like SSI, Medicaid, and planning situations faced by parents and individuals with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. So Eric and his son, William, live in Frederick, Maryland. So Eric, it's great to have you back. I know we've done this a couple times and it's very popular and is needed again, so welcome. I'll turn it over to you, but first we have a poll, and I'd like to go ahead and launch that poll. It's a brief one, so just take a second, and we want to get your feedback before we dive in here. So the question is, do you feel confident that you're on the right track to help your child transition from high school into adult services? I'm going to go ahead and launch that right now. There we go. So take just about 30 seconds to choose the choice that best suits your situation. And we'll give it about 10 more seconds. All right, with most of the tallies coming in, 13% say yes, you are confident. 56% say no, that you do not feel confident. And 31% say I'm not sure. And that's okay. That's why we're here today. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And Eric, it is all yours. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for having me. It's always a privilege to present with you and Elville and Associates. And for the audience, thank you for joining me today. Hopefully, my goal is by the time we finish today's presentation, maybe you won't be 100% confident, but at least you'll know the questions you should be asking, which can often be a part of just even a start of the battle, and knowing where to go to get those questions answered. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the presentation. I'm going to pause in between age ranges to give individuals an opportunity to ask questions. I prefer to answer questions as we go along, because as somebody who attends webinars, sometimes I feel like I had a question on the tip of my tongue, and then it got to the end of the presentation and there either wasn't enough time to get it answered, or I'd forgotten what I wanted to ask because so much other information had come at me, and I had other questions. So I really want people to take the opportunity to feel free to ask questions, put them in chat. Jeff will will read them for me, and then we can go through there. So I have the slides are going to be available. I did include a timeline because to me the timeline is helpful to understand a framework of what to think about when you should be doing things. Very often, families I'm working with, it almost gets to be too overwhelming, too much information, and you end up freezing up because you're looking out 5-10 years down the road, and it can be like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, when in reality, oftentimes a lot of what you're looking at doesn't apply to you yet. And that's going to be the goal of today's presentation, making sure you really understand what you should be worried about, and more importantly, what not to worry about. And if you're a professional watching this, what can you do to help your clients to put their minds at ease? So the first thing you're going to do is, it all starts with a diagnosis. Oftentimes, as parents, we know or we feel there's something going on. Maybe a teacher has said, have you considered getting your child evaluated? I have heard frequently that the schools are giving you an IEP diagnosis, but that's not the same thing as a formal diagnosis. And I apologize for the dog barking. It's just a little too cold to leave them out in the backyard today. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you get the diagnosis and you understand what the diagnosis means is, from a medical sense, I mean, the physician who's giving you the diagnosis, the psychologist, they should be going over some of the things that you need to be aware of. This can be pretty heavy. It can be very overwhelming. I encourage people to go with another family member, with somebody, with a good friend, somebody that can take notes, who's not as emotionally involved. When you're getting information, especially information that you might have expected but you weren't ready for, because it's really hard to be ready for that, it can be really helpful to have somebody else there to take notes. I know I felt that way when my son got his diagnosis, and then more recently in 2020, when I had my cancer diagnosis, having my fiance there with me was helpful, both from the moral support point of view, but also to check in with and say, okay, what was the doctor saying? Because I kind of blanked out for a minute. It's so overwhelming, you kind of almost stop listening, not on purpose, but because there's just it can be a lot. So make sure you have somebody available if possible when you're getting that, when you're going into the diagnosis. And then after you get the diagnosis and you've processed it, because it does take some time to process, start looking into the services that are available. We're in Maryland. I'm going to focus primarily on Maryland services. The terms I'm using are for Maryland. Every state will have a Medicaid waiver. So when I say apply for a Medicaid waiver, every state has one. The agency you're applying with will be called something different. In Maryland, it is called the Developmental Disabilities Administration, or DDA. So you're going to want to register with DDA when you get a diagnosis of an intellectual or developmental disability. That could be cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, some of these genetic disorders, autism, obviously. So you're gonna apply for that. Then you're gonna also apply in Maryland for the autism waiver, and that's a very simple application. Don't let it discourage you when somebody says, "Oh, well, there's an 8-year waiting list." Sure, but that 8-year waiting list starts from the time you sign up. If you don't sign up, then and you wait for 3 or 4 years and you say, "Oh, well, let me sign up now." Well, you've let that window go by. And you never know when the state is going to get more money to pay down or pay towards that Medicaid waiver and get more people served. So I really don't like people being told. I don't know who's doing the telling. I've just people I'm working with tell me, "Oh, I was told not to apply because the waiting list is too long." I don't like that. I mean, don't let that be a reason that you're not going to apply for services. You know, if they tell you you don't qualify, that's different, but you always want to apply. I'm not a huge fan of applying for supplemental security income, SSI, when the child is under the age of 18, because the parents' assets and income are taken into consideration, so it can be very, very difficult to get approved for SSI. I'm not saying don't do it, I just want to manage your expectations. If you apply, I can't promise you that you're going to get it, even if it seems like it's a slam dunk because your child's got all these medical needs. You know, so if you are going to apply for SSI, I would make that one of the last things you do, and I would hire a professional. I would work with somebody that can, you know, an attorney or a non-attorney representative who can help you apply for SSI, can serve as your advocate when you're working with the Social Security Administration, and who can guide you on that journey. That is not me. That is not what I do. But I do, you know, it's my understanding Elville and Associates has attorneys that can help you with that. So that's what I would do for SSI. In Maryland, you also have low intensity support services, which is a $2,000 grant that you can apply for twice a year. I believe the dates are going to be March and July. Don't quote me on that. You know, if you go to the DDA website, you will be able to find information about low intensity support services, and you know, make sure you apply for that. It's a $2,000 grant. It's a lottery system. You apply. You're not guaranteed to get it, but if you are approved for it, you can use it for a lot of different things. I've used it for music therapy. I've used it for summer camp for my son. It's a really great resource, and I don't know that every family out there knows about it or is applying for it. So that's everything that you want to apply for, and that is all within your control in terms of applying for it. Obviously, getting approved is a different animal, but you're going to apply, and then when you apply for DDA, for example, a coordinator of community service, a CCS, is going to come out to you within 30 days. Is the way it used to be. I'm not sure what it is during COVID. And they're going to interview you about your child's condition and the support you need. And it's important here to be very realistic without being overly dramatic about what your child needs. And I'm saying that because as parents, I feel, speaking from experience, I feel we tend to highlight the positives and brush away the needs or the supports of our child. And you don't want to do that. When you have a CCS coming out, they're really there to make sure that you get the supports your child needs. So you need to make sure you're very clear about how your child is on a day-to-day basis, and use the framework of what if you weren't there to provide the support. You know, when a child's a minor, oftentimes they won't qualify for any DDA supports unless there's a crisis. So you really want to make sure that DDA has a very clear picture of what kind of help is needed when mom and dad aren't there, or when mom's not there or dad's not there if you're a single parent. After you've done all of that, you're going to want to apply, you're going to want to go ahead and get a financial plan and an estate plan done. Now, financial plans come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Financial advisors have different ways that they get paid. It's really up to you to decide what type you want to work with, who you want to work with. Some great resources are going to be Garrett Planning Network, XY Planning Network, NAPFA, NAPFA, All of those are going to have what are called fee-only planners, where you go and you would hire somebody on an hourly rate, or they would manage your investments. You also have, because you have a child with a diagnosis who has a disability, you're probably going to need to fund a special needs trust. So you're going to want to talk to somebody who can help you figure out how much life insurance you need. Not a very fun or sexy topic, but you want to talk to an expert who really understands that. So I'm really big on making sure when you're looking for the life insurance to fund a special needs trust, you're talking to an agent, in my mind, who that is pretty much all they focus on, because insurance is tricky. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of different companies out there. There's a lot of different types of insurance out there. I used to sell insurance. I don't any longer. I can tell you, based on my experience, there's a ton of information, and you really want to you're working with somebody who does this for a living and not as kind of a one-off. The same is true with planning when you have a child with a disability. You want to work with an attorney who truly understands special needs and/or elder law. There's a lot of overlap between elder law and special needs planning, and the rules for both apply in that you're planning for Medicaid often. You're planning for Medicaid eligibility and making sure that you don't lose eligibility for Medicaid because of assets or income limitations. And this is where working with an attorney who really understands that is going to benefit you. Talking to an attorney who does, in air quotes, traditional estate planning, yes, they can probably put together a durable power of attorney, a will. They might even have software that will draft a special needs trust for you. But without that experience, my concern would be, are they asking you the right questions? Are they making sure they really understand your situation? Do they know what questions to ask? More importantly, do they have the information to give to you when you're asking questions? And, so when you're working with an attorney and you're picking an attorney, I really like to make sure that you are clear that this individual has experience with special needs, understands the limitations and the rules of the special needs trust, and can explain it to you in a way that you understand. It's not enough all the time to just say, yeah, they know how to draft a special needs trust. Very often, as a consumer, as a parent, I don't need to know the nuts and bolts, but I don't want to feel stupid when somebody's explaining something to me. I want to make sure that they are able to use plain English. They're not using a lot of jargon. And so that's something to consider when you're hiring either an attorney or an advisor or an insurance agent. My preference is always for that professional who is going to take more of a educational approach. Let me teach you, unless you tell me you don't want the information. And I've really, I'm biased, but I think Elville and Associates does really well with that. The financial plan, if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have a lot of assets, don't necessarily worry about going out and spending $3,000 to $5,000 on getting a financial plan done. It's more important to understand, ballpark, how much money do you need to fund the special needs trust for your child? And it's more important to get that life insurance in place when you're young, to pay for, to provide for your spouse if you have one, and to fund that trust. That's really the big priority when you're doing financial planning, at least in the beginning. For those of you that are more mature, you've been working a long time, you have more money set aside in the 401k, you have more money set aside through other investments or what have you, that would probably be a better target or a better opportunity to go work with a financial advisor. I'm not telling everybody on this call that they need to go out and hire a financial advisor right away. I am saying, if you're going to set up a special needs trust, it doesn't make any sense hiring an attorney to set up a special needs trust, in my opinion, until you're very clear about how you're going to fund that trust. Because to have a trust, you need to put something into it. So that's everything that and it's a lot. We just talked about this is all right after a diagnosis, right? So this is a lot to do in those first 5-6 years when you get a diagnosis, or and then maybe it's not, maybe the diagnosis doesn't occur at birth. Maybe this occurs when you have a child who's a teenager, or maybe it's you and you're an adult now. So understand it's a lot. Understand it's going to feel overwhelming. Understand it can feel hopeless at times because maybe you're interviewing a lot of professionals and it just feels like you're not finding somebody who gets you. Don't settle. Ask people that you hang out with, that hey, who did you work with? Facebook groups. There's all kinds of groups out there. Talk to other people to find out what they've done and who they liked. That's really usually a pretty good barometer. So I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions before I dive into the school years after talking about the diagnosis to pretty much elementary school, and see if anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Eric. We don't have any questions as of yet. If somebody does put a question in the next minute or so, I will let you know, though.
Okay. So when you enter the schools, there's a lot of additional layers of complexity. And again, speaking as a parent, where I saw a lot of my wife and I, where I saw a lot of our energy being focused was on the IEP process. And, to the point of, I think if I was being completely transparent, we ignored everything else. And I don't know that I'm alone in that. I don't know that my wife and I were the only people that have ever done that. We did pay for PT and OT above and beyond what the school would give us in the IEP. We paid for that out of pocket. We did a lot of private pay for that. This was back before the Affordable Care Act. It was back before insurance really acknowledged the benefit of therapies for autism. My son never had ABA therapy. I didn't know that was a thing until, after my wife had died and I started researching therapies out there. So make sure that you take the time to, I don't want to say make friends with the IEP team, but be friendly with them. It doesn't hurt to build relationships with your son's teachers or your daughter's therapists or para-teachers, para-educators. Get to know the admins and the administrators at your school district in a positive way. Take a look at joining these special education citizens advisory committees, CCAC, or whatever it's called in your county. Every county has one. And join PTOs or the PTA or whatever your school has for parents. As much as you can, be active and be involved. I did an interview with Danielle Williams on my podcast about a month ago, where she talked about everything she does for her sons. She takes a day off when she's getting ready to go into the IEP meeting. She knows how emotional it's going to be, and she needs that extra time to prepare. She'll send an email to the teacher every year saying, hey, I want to introduce you to my son. This is who they are. She has 2 sons, and she does that for each of them. And she does that so that the child becomes more than a diagnosis, more than a couple diagnostic codes on a piece of paper, really painting a more full picture of the child. So you're going to be considering, are you happy with the IEP? Do you feel like your child is getting the most supports necessary? And if you're not, or if you're not sure, that doesn't mean the school is automatically doing something wrong, but it may be an opportunity, or maybe a reason for you to look at hiring a non-attorney special education consultant or an attorney who specializes in special education. Again, neither of those are worlds that I work in. I'm happy to give referrals to people to the professionals that work in that space. I tend to look for professionals who are more collaborative. And, when you're interviewing professionals, I think working with a professional who takes the approach of, we're all here for the same reason. None of us came into this profession, teachers, administrators, whatever, to, find fault or to screw kids over. So no, starting at that baseline, what can we do to help this child out? I like having that. I like working with people who take that approach first, more than I like working with people who come in right away with a pointing their fingers and placing blame. Now there's going to be a time and place for for somebody who's more of a bulldog. I'm certainly not naive, but I think it's important you decide if you need to work with somebody who has, because you're concerned about your son or daughter's IEP. I think it's important you know for yourself what type of professional you want to work with. And I'm saying that because it'll avoid a lot of problems down the road. If you prefer somebody who's more of a bulldog, more aggressive, for lack of a better term, more direct, and you get somebody who takes a very collaborative approach, you're not going to be happy. You probably will not be happy with the way they're doing things. So you just want to make sure you take some self-examination, talk it over with your spouse if it's appropriate, and take that into consideration when you're looking for people. For therapies, there's a lot of therapy out there. I'm not here to be pro or against any given therapy. I'll tell you, I've used music therapy and I was very impressed with it. My son has gotten speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy most of his life, and I'm very pleased with that. As with any other type of thing, any other type of profession, you're going to have good ones and bad ones. If you find somebody you're not satisfied with, don't stick with them. If they are in the school, that's going back to that non-education advocate or the special education training. ABA could be an option. There's a lot of different changes in ABA now. Behavior therapies for picky eating, bathroom toileting. It's not all because of somebody has negative behaviors that need to be changed. It could also be helping them learn how to tie their shoes or something else, right? Making sure that, again, they're more than their diagnosis. What do they like to do? What types of things do they want to do? Is there a way you can get them to do something that isn't therapy? Do they like to play soccer? Do they want to, join a baseball team or, look into the Special Olympics or, something like that. Keen, kids enjoying exercise now. If you're in Montgomery County, Up County Community Resources, Baltimore County, probably has something similar. Talk to the Arc of Baltimore. Look into those nonprofits that serve the county you live in and find out, hey, what's out there? What's, as a family, what can we get out and do that isn't going to be just another doctor visit? They may start having a conversation with you. Should your child be on a diploma or certificate bound? That typically happens, I think, if I remember, when your child's 14, 15, but don't quote me on that. Education isn't my forte, right? It's something that you want to talk to the professionals about. And the difference being, if you're on a diploma, you graduate with a diploma at 18 or 19 years old. You don't have to graduate if you have education needs. You can stay in school until age 21 and age out with a certificate that allows you to go to college afterwards. It has all the same benefits as a diploma, based on my understanding. You're going to want to get the psych eval done. This will do things checking for IQ. It'll also do other benefits to determine what types of supports you need. If you do get a psychological eval and you're registered with the DDA, you're going to want to make sure you update your CCS so they can update their records. Everything you do, anytime your child's getting new therapy or any new supports, you're going to want to update your CCS and let the CCS know. Now, typically, in my experience, if you're not receiving DDA services because your child's not old enough yet, your CCS will check in about once a year. Don't wait for them to check in. If you have something new to report, go ahead and update them. Get that. Make sure they have a copy of it. Make sure they have that information in there. it can only help you down the road, and it's gonna be one less thing you have to remember at that annual review when they're trying to, a lot of times it'll be a checklist. Let's go through this real quick, and boom, boom, boom. So the more you can be proactive and really feed information to the coordinator of community service, the better it's going to be for you and your child. And professionals, if you are working with somebody and they say, oh yeah, well now we have to plan for an extra $300 a month because I'm doing my child's getting occupational therapy, you can gently ask them, oh, have you updated your CCS about that? Or, cool, well, have you looked into low intensity support services? Maybe that can help you for a couple months so you're not coming out of pocket as much. Or if you're helping them with their taxes, hey, medical bills can be, if you're itemizing for your taxes, this could be a medical expense. Make sure you're tracking the mileage to and from your doctor visit too, and we can see if we can itemize at the end of the year. These are ways that professionals can help, and help families who are often overwhelmed and this isn't what they do for a living. They didn't have a child so they could become kings at Excel and keeping track of all the line items of what they need to do in their life, right? So professionals, I really rely on you guys to help families by nudging them along and being that backup, being that support. So shifting into high school, you're going to start hearing language about transition planning. What types of supports do you want when your child leaves high school? What types of supports does your child need? Who knows, right? I didn't know what was. I was like, well, tell me what's out there. I have no idea. So the Medicaid waiver through DDA pays for generally four types of supports. You have vocational support, which is getting a job, keeping a job. And that could come in the form of a job coach. It may come in the form of transportation to and from the job, training for the job. This is where the CCS can help you do a deeper dive into what it is. But it's vocational. It's going to be personal supports, which is going to be your day-to-day living, helping you or your child with the skills that they need to be independent. That could be doing laundry, it could be cooking, it could be buying groceries, things like that. You're going to have meaningful day or community supports, and that's going to be, if you can't work a full day, a full 8-hour day, getting you out in the community, getting you introduced to the community. It should be more than taking you to the mall and just walking you around the mall. It should really be helping you find opportunities to volunteer, find hobbies that you like that are outside of the home. And then the last one, in some cases, you could find DDA, they could help you modify a home for residential. They could provide residential services directly, meaning you are living in a home paid for by a provider, where you will have roommates, or perhaps your parents, or you, if you are a parent, you are buying a place for your child to live, or you're leaving your house to the child, and staff is going to be paid for by the Medicaid waiver to make sure your child can live in that home safely. So it's going to be residential supports, vocational supports, personal supports, and community supports are going to be the four very broad categories that the Medicaid waiver will pay for. And you have the option of doing self-directed for those, or using an agency. Again, your coordinator of community services is really the person to talk to about what's the difference between doing self-directed and using an agency. How much support will my child get? I have no way of knowing that. It's really going to be based on everything you've told your CCS while your child is growing up, and then the report that the CCS files after they interview you and your child. So that's DDA, that's transition planning. Again, that will typically start at age 21, 22 years old. Maryland is unique in that the governor has the transitioning youth program. So every child in Maryland who has a developmental disability and has been approved for services through DDA will receive funding the year they leave high school if they age out of school at 21 on the certificate program. So that's, again, another reason to register for DDA. Make sure you sign up. before your child turns 21. I like you to do it as soon as you get the diagnosis, but if your child is 15, you haven't done it yet, and you're hearing this, you're on this call, go ahead and sign up for DDA. Think about, does your child need a state ID or can they drive? Many individuals who are on the autism spectrum have too much anxiety to drive. They're not going to drive. My son doesn't want to drive. And so we went and got him a state ID instead of the driver's license. But it's something you want them to have, especially if they're going to be going out on their own or with staff. You want to make sure they have a state ID. Some counties, the Department of Rehabilitative Services, DOORS, will help you get your driver's license. I don't want to speak out of turn, so you're going to want to talk to your county, find out if this is something that they will help you with, if they have the funding for it. You know, DOORS is all about employment. It's a short-term service, typically 6 months. All they do is help individuals with any type of disability, any type, not just intellectual developmental disabilities, get a job. And when they're in high school, there's this benefit called pre-employment transition services, or PREATS. And that'll start as early as age 14. And this is a really great opportunity for your child to go out there and get some real world experience. So DOORS will help will do a skills assessment for your child, determine what they're good at, what they enjoy doing. And then they're gonna, you have the potential of working with DOORS to find summer work, getting paid a real wage, you know, at least minimum wage. And, you know, and then that child is gaining the experience of what it's like to work a job. And it's also gonna be information that you can put on their resume. They worked here, this is what they did. You know, start building that resume for the child. It's a really good opportunity. I really happy to see PREATS. I don't know that enough people know about it or are trying to take advantage of it. I will tell you, I acknowledge that from what families have told me, in some counties, getting help from DOORS can be a bit of a struggle. It can very often, some of these counselors are overwhelmed. They have a very big caseload and there's just not enough of them to go around. So you may experience that the DOORS counselor doesn't get back to you in a timely manner or doesn't feel like they're supporting you. All I can say is try to have some grace and patience, because they do have a very hard job, and there is a shortage in staffing just like there is everywhere else. And if you feel like the individual is being negligent, not just overwhelmed, then certainly try to reach out and contact a supervisor and see if you can escalate it. But again, I feel more often than not, people come into this line of work to help other people, not to try to be a barrier. So I really ask you, when you're working with professionals, to have that mindset and just be a little patient. And again, if I'm not naive, if somebody's not doing their job, they're not doing their job. Talk to law enforcement, get out there, introduce your child to law enforcement. Montgomery County has a phenomenal program with Officer Reyes and her team going out there. And I'm sure there's other counties have equal phenomenal teams helping individuals with disabilities. Pathfinders for Autism has a program to help introduce, you know, individuals with disabilities to law enforcement. It's not just for autism, even though the name is Pathfinders for Autism. So there's a lot of tools out there that you can look into and get some training and some help. But you want to make sure your children know what to do in the event that they're pulled over or that the police officer stops them or something else. College planning, not everybody will go to college, but it doesn't mean you should take it off the plate. In Maryland, if you have a child who is receiving Social Security via SSI or SSDI, they may qualify for free tuition at a Maryland community college. You will want to look into that. There are some prereqs, there are some requirements that you have to meet to get that, but it is a benefit that you should be aware of. And it's community colleges, it's not universities. So, do your own homework on that. Just know that it exists. That's out there. Organizations like College Living Experience are another great resource if you're worried about your child learning how to live independently or gain some other skills. There's organizations like College Living Experience that can put the child up in an apartment, or they can give you the child the framework that they need. There's coaches out there who will help the child with executive functioning. There's a lot of tools available to help the child or young adult, because if you're talking about college, it's probably not fair to call them a child, be ready and have a very successful transition into college. And then you're going to want to do that last psych eval before they leave school, to get a good baseline of what's going on, how they're doing. And, again, when you apply for Social Security, when you apply for SSI, these are all things that you need to have stacked with you. So when you submit it, you can give as much information about your child as possible. So let's talk about SSI. I would apply when the month the child turns 18, I would apply for SSI. It doesn't matter if the child's in school or not, they can apply for SSI, receive SSI while they're still in school. If they're working and earning a paycheck while they're in school, they have what's called the student earned income exclusion, where the first $7,000 and some change will be ignored, and it does not count against their SSI. Normally, if you're working, your earned income will reduce your SSI by $2 by $1 for every $2 you earn. There's some other rules in there, but just that should not be a reason not to work and go out and earn income. In Maryland, if you apply for SSI and you're approved, you automatically get enrolled in Medicaid. So, I encourage my families that I'm working with to apply for SSI between the ages of 18 and 23, 24, because you want to get the child, if they're eligible, to get it as soon as possible. And it may have them qualify for the disabled adult child benefit. The other thing you need to do in any state you live in, if you have a child who was born male, you need to register them for the selective service when they turn 18. And that will avoid any problems if they decide to seek federal employment, or if they seek state employment, or they're looking for future benefits. It doesn't matter how significant disability is, you need to register them. So that's a broad overview about high school age. I have not talked about ABLE accounts yet, because I think there's so much other things that you need to do. More often than not, an ABLE account isn't really something you need to worry about. Even if your child has a 529 account for college savings, that college savings 529 account will not affect the child if they apply for SSI, because typically you are the owner, the child's beneficiary. So unless the child is getting money from the 529 account, it's not going to be looked at by Social Security when you apply for SSI. If your child has an UTMA, Uniform Trust for Minors Act, I don't remember, I think that's what it stands for, UTMA, or a UGMA account, then you will want to get that money out of there before the child turns 18 and put into an ABLE account. And that's where, if you have an UTMA or an UGMA, you probably did that with a financial advisor. The financial advisor should be able to help you get it set up and moved into the ABLE account. So I've thrown a lot of information out here. I'm going to pause here and just give people an opportunity to ask questions that they have.
Thanks, Eric. No questions yet. So attendees, I'll encourage you to pose those questions. I know you have some out there, something that might have been bothering you, a question you wanted to ask for a long time. So go ahead and pose those questions to Eric. Don't be shy.
I'm doing an amazing job, but my concern is I'm overwhelming people, and they're not sure where to start. So that's certainly not my intent. I want to make sure everybody gets a good feel for what's going on. So let's talk about 18 and older. I hinted at SSI just a minute ago. You apply for SSI at 18. I'd like you to do it before you're 24, because if your child is significantly impacted by their disability, they become eligible for the disabled adult child benefits. So let's talk about what that means. The disabled adult child benefit means that your child will qualify to receive Social Security based on the benefit you receive when you either become disabled or you retire. So let's use a real life example or a model example. Let's say your child starts receiving SSI this year, 2022. They get their full benefit, which is $841 per month. You retire 10 years from now, 2032, and your Social Security benefit is $3,000 a month. Because your child qualified for SSI before the age of 24, they become eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. And they will start receiving $1,500 a month in SSDI a few months after you file with Social Security to collect your $3,000 a month retirement check from Social Security. 24 months after they start receiving that $1,500 SSDI, they will start receiving Medicare, automatically enrolled. That first month that they receive Medicare, their Social Security payment will be reduced to pay for Medicare Part B premiums. The following month, Medicaid will kick in and pay the Medicare premiums going forward, and your child will be reimbursed for the Medicare Part B premium. They will also be enrolled in Medicare Extra Help, which is Medicare's prescription drug program to help people with low income. So your child will have Medicare Part A, which is hospital, Medicare Part B, which is medical insurance, Medicare Part D, which is prescription drugs, and Medicaid. And Medicaid will serve as the what's called Medicare Advantage plan and fill in the gaps for anything that Medicare Part A, B, or D don't pay for. So Medicare will pay for 80% of doctor bills, and you if you're on Medicare, you have a 20%. You make up that 20%. Your child who is dual eligible for Medicare and Medicaid will have that 20% paid for by Medicaid. So this is where it gets tricky. Because your child is no longer receiving SSI, because the SSI is reduced by $1 for every dollar of unearned income. So as soon as your child received $842 in SSDI, they're not going to have a single dollar of SSI coming to them anymore. So they are getting $1,500 in SSDI, $0 in SSI. They remain eligible for Medicaid because the only reason they lost their SSI was because they started getting SSDI. Medicaid is what's paying for your child's DVA waiver. So those residential supports, the vocational supports, the personal supports, and the community supports I mentioned earlier in the presentation are all being paid for by Medicaid as well. So even though your child is no longer receiving SSI, they still have to stay within the income and asset limits for Medicaid. SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, does not care how much you have in assets. And for income, they're more concerned about, have you exceeded substantial gainful activity? So with Social Security Disability Insurance, it's either you're getting the full benefit or you're getting nothing. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, is the one that's going to be reduced by how much earned income you're getting or how much unearned income you're getting. So it's confusing, right? So when people say, oh, my child's getting Social Security, you need to be really clear what benefit from Social Security is your child getting? Is it SSI? Is it SSDI? And that's something that you've set up a myssa.gov account. You just go to myssa.gov, you create the account for you. If you're your child's representative payee, you'll be able to see your child's benefit, what they're receiving, and everything that you need to see from your account. I would still create a myssa.gov account for your child to keep anybody else from opening that account in their name. But it's really useful. It's a really, really useful tool, especially if your child's representative payee or the person who's getting the money on behalf of your child from Social Security. So that's Social Security. That's what disabled adult child benefit's going to look like potentially. That's what Medicaid, Medicare. That's how they work together. And this is all part of what should be taken into consideration when you're doing your financial planning to provide for your child after you're gone. So when you're funding a trust and you're saying, well, I think my child's going to need, $5,000 per month. Well, okay, well, what does that look like if they're receiving disabled adult child benefit? Because there's a twist. Your child gets 50% of your benefit while you're alive. That will increase to 75% of your benefit when you die. So if you're getting a $3,000 benefit and you die, then your child's benefit goes from $1,500 a month to $2,250 a month. So if you said your child needs $5,000 and they're going to receive $2,250 a month from Social Security, and I apologize, I'm using numbers, and this is not the best for that. But if you say my child needs $5,000 and they're going to get $2,250 per month from Social Security, then I need to provide $2,750 per month for my child. And that becomes really big numbers, because if you needed to do the full $5,000 per month, you would need to come up with $60,000 per year for however many years you wanted to provide for. So let's say you were worried about providing for 20 years. So $60,000 times 20 is $1.2 million that you would need to come up with to fund your special needs trust for your child. If they qualify for the disabled adult child benefit, you would need to provide $33,000 a year or $660,000 per year, or for 20 years. That's a lot of money. I mean, it's almost half of what you would need to provide. So when you're buying life insurance, it's really important to know, is my child going to get Social Security or not? Is there a pretty good chance my child's going to get Social Security or not? This is also why I really stress to parents that if you're going to file for Social Security, even though it's so tempting to take it early, take it at 62, 63, 65 when you sign up for Medicare, it's very, very important, very, very important to wait until full retirement age. Because when you take it early, when you take your Social Security early, your benefit is going to be reduced by 8% every year that you take it early. So if your full retirement age is 67 and you take it at 62, your Social Security benefit could be reduced by 40%. Or using the $3,000 example, your Social Security could be reduced by $1,200. So your child would go from receiving, which means you would receive $1,800 instead of $3,000. Your child would receive $900 instead of $1,500 while you're alive. I'm hoping even though I know it's really hard to grasp the numbers when I'm doing this, just talking it out, and I don't have I don't have a visual for it, and I apologize. I hope what you're hearing is that big gap between $900 and $1,500, that big gap. That's a $7,000 a year gap. And when you take that out 30, 40 years, it becomes more and more money that you're leaving on the table, and you have to come out of pocket to replace to provide for your child when you're gone, and unnecessarily. I mean, this is a benefit that you worked for, you paid into Social Security to earn. So why would you not take the full benefit you're entitled to? I'm going to stop beating that horse. I think I've probably killed it. And I'm going to move into talking more about guardianship, supported decision making. This is something where it's going to be a family choice. I don't think guardianship should be the default. Guardianship is when, and Jeff can chime in, but because I'm not an attorney, I know Jeff's not either, but my understanding of guardianship is when your child is legally incompetent to make sound decisions, and they do this for parents as well who have dementia, then you are petitioning the court, the probate court in your county, to find the person incompetent and appoint you to be the decision maker for either their finances or for their personal life. So you are either the guardian of the person or the guardian of the property, or both. Typically, individuals who have intellectual developmental disabilities are not going to require a guardian of the property because they're not going to own any property, because if they had property, they may not qualify for SSI or Medicaid. If they have an ABLE account, ABLE has something called the authorized legal representative that gives the same rights, well, maybe not the same rights, but gives you the ability to act on behalf of the ABLE account holder. Social Security has the representative payee, who allows you to make the decisions for the money that goes into from Social Security into the representative payee account. So you don't necessarily need guardian of the property. Guardian of the person is going to be the person who makes medical decisions for the individual. It's going to decide where the individual lives. It's much more involved than just having a durable power of attorney. So it's something you really need to consider and think about, and have a discussion with I'm a big fan of having a discussion with an attorney before doing it. Can you file for guardianship on your own? Yes, absolutely. You can go to the courthouse. From what I understand, you can go to the courthouse, you can file for guardianship. Your child will have a attorney appointed on their behalf to represent them and their interests. But yes, you can do all of this on your own. I'm just a big fan of at least talking to an attorney to make sure you understand exactly what you're doing and what you'll be responsible for. Supported decision. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Eric, yeah. Just to comment on that, I am not an attorney, so I'd be hesitant to expand really on anything that you say. But we recently did a full webinar presentation on what you need to know about guardianship. So as many of you know, I typically send out a comprehensive follow-up message after our webinars, and I will include a link to that presentation if you're interested in watching it. It is a good presentation that has good information in it, so I'd be happy to do that. So, and once you're finished with the guardianship topic, we do have some questions, including a few related to the SSI topic. If we could perhaps pause to talk about those before you go into the next subject.
Sure, let's take those. And again, I apologize for the dog in the background. Yeah, let's take some questions.
Not a problem at all. Okay, but the first question, not related to SSI or anything of that nature. In your opinion, how important are hobbies and sports at the elementary age?
I've never been a fan of sports, so I'm probably not the best person to say anything about sports. I was never big in sports when I was younger. I think hobbies are important, just because it gives the opportunity for you and your child to find some common ground and do things other than going to therapy all the time, and it just kind of relaxing. I wish I'd done more to help my son build some hobbies. when he was younger, because now, and maybe this is just the time we're in now, everything seems to be digital. So I do think hobbies can be relaxing, maybe woodworking or painting or something like that. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Next question. I applied for SSI and I received paperwork as a payee, but have not received anything in over a month, even though I have left messages to SSA agent to find out if anything else is needed before start receiving a check/electronic transfer to a bank account. Anything you would recommend I do?
It sounds like you've done everything already. I would make sure that you have an account. It said you received that your representative pay. I'm not sure if you've already told them the bank account information. That should have been something that you sent in. Because if they don't have a bank account for them to send the money to, that may be what's holding them back. But if you did set up a bank account and you sent them that bank account information, I would keep trying to reach out to them to find out what the delay is, and more importantly, make sure it's not going to a bank account that you don't have control over.
Okay. Next question. Do you know anything about benefits to children of federal employees who don't pay into Social Security?
So, kind of. If you're not in the FERS, if you're in the old retirement program, you may still qualify for your child may still qualify to get under federal employee health insurance benefits. But they would not, if you're not paying into Social Security and your spouse is, they may qualify on your spouse. But that's gonna, you probably want to look into talking to either setting up a consult with me to do a deeper dive, or talking to a financial advisor to do a deeper dive, because there are some benefits out there for federal employees, but you're in a very unique situation it's hard to address it in this forum.
Yes, agreed. If one thing I would say about it, again, as a non-attorney, if this is a question related to disability benefits in some capacity, while that's not something we at this time specifically address at the firm, we do work with a disability attorney that could possibly answer your question and has a free consultation. So just to let you know, if you wanted to email me, I could point you in the right direction if that's your question. So thank you for the question. Next question is, if someone is on SSI, why can that person only have up to only $2,000?
That's just a federal rule that individuals who receive supplemental security income can only have $2,000 in assets. It hasn't been updated in years. So I don't know where that number came from back when they made the rule. I just know it has been updated in a very long time. And all I can do is tell you what the rule is. And the way around it is setting up a special needs trust and an ABLE account, because you can have, you can have a lot more assets in these special needs trusts. The ABLE account, you're limited to putting in $16,000 a year up to $100,000 without affecting your SSI. The special needs trust, you can have, there's really no limit to what you have in your special needs trust. But I don't know the why it's only $2,000.
Okay, and we also have a Maryland ABLE webinar, as we have Maryland ABLE as a partner as well, that I'll send a link out for that presentation that we do once every 6 months or so too. So just as an aside. Last question, I think. Are you aware of and do you recommend permanent whole life insurance for a very young child prior to medical diagnosis?
I'm not, I've heard of it. I can tell you I got a policy on my son, after the diagnosis, because I'm concerned about him developing diabetes and high blood pressure because of his dietary habits. So I wanted to make sure I had something on him. But with regards to your question, I think that's going to be a individual's choice family by family. I know Gerber sells permanent insurance for children. You know, the reason that I think you would buy the insurance would be if you're worried about future insurability and you wanted them to be able to have life insurance down the road. But it's really going to be a personal person by person case. I'd be more interested in making sure that the families had the life insurance they needed to provide for each other if they're married and to fund a trust before I would worry about getting life insurance for a child.
Okay, and actually we do have a few more brief ones here. I knew they were out there, Eric, just waiting to put them in there. So do you know if a guardian has to be a U.S. citizen?
I do not, and that would be a question for an attorney.
Okay, and I think we actually answered that question in the webinar that we offered. Again, I'll go ahead and send that link out. Thank you. Next question, is there a parental income limit for SSDI?
Not sure I understand that. I'm going to answer the question I think you're asking, and if I'm wrong, just please clarify with Jeff. So I believe the question is being asked is, does substantial gainful activity apply to the income that the parent is earning if the child is receiving Social Security disability insurance? And the answer to that is no. The parent's income does not affect the child's SSDI in any way, form, or fashion. If the parent is working and collecting Social Security because let's say they're 67, they're collecting Social Security and they're still working, the only way that might affect the Social Security that the child is receiving is there's a possibility it may increase it, but I doubt it. Social Security doesn't look at the benefit of the parent after age 67. So if the parent waits till 70 to file for Social Security, it doesn't increase the child's benefit. If the parent works while collecting Social Security, the parent's benefit may increase because Social Security will average the highest 30 years of earnings. So if the parent is making more money, you know, at age 68, 69 than they did when they were 51, 52, the parent's Social Security benefit may be adjusted, but I don't think the child's would be adjusted. Regardless, the child's benefit will not be negatively impacted if the parent is working while the child is receiving SSDI. So I think that's the question that was being asked. If it's not, please clarify.
Okay. Do we need guardianship over our son when he turns 18 in order to keep making medical decisions on his behalf?
I think this is probably an attorney question. I will tell you, doctors are not required to, by law and HIPAA, they don't have to listen to you or talk to you. In practice, I think if you have a good relationship with a physician, I don't see this being an issue unless something happens and you go to an emergency room where the child isn't known. But I think you can accomplish the same thing if the child is unable because they're unconscious or something. I think you can accomplish the same goal of speaking for your child, making your child's medical decisions with the power of a healthcare proxy or a power of attorney. But again, this is really an area I would rather talk to an attorney about than try to give you my uneducated best guess.
Okay, and last question, any pointers for someone working to get out of the disability system and get back into mainstream contributing? Sorry, I can't see the whole question. I'm sorry. Let's start over there. Any pointers for someone getting out of disability system and get back into mainstream contributing member of society?
Look into the programs like Ticket to Work, the Pathway to Achieving Self-Support, PASS. Look into those Social Security programs. Reach out to a Social Security benefits counselor. I am not a Social Security benefits counselor, but they have them out there. And then really work with them, because there are programs to allow you to work, earn more money, and start getting off of public benefits. I will warn you, it can be scary because there's a bit of a cliff from when you when you no longer qualify for benefits and what you may need, especially depending where you live in Maryland. The cost of living can be really high, and that can be it can be a scary cliff to jump. But I would encourage you to talk to a benefits counselor about what's out there, what type of programs are out there to help you, and take advantage of those programs.
Okay, that's everything for now. Thank you very much, Eric.
You're welcome. Those are really good questions. Really, really good questions. So
great questions. Thank you.
We left off at guardianship versus poor decision making. You have a video that Jeff is going to share. I encourage you to check that out. I guarantee you that will have so much more information than anything I can provide. When your child turns 18, they do have the ability to register to vote. That is their right. I encourage everybody to not just register, but exercise their right in elections. They do have accommodations for people that need the accommodations when they're voting. Housing is a nightmare no matter where you live. There are housing vouchers. Whether or not they're funded, that's a bigger question. There are a lot of resources out there. You have Main Street in Rockville. You have some other places. Housing is going to be very individualized. Are you using a residential agency with DDA? Are you doing what I'm doing? I'm going to leave my house to my son, and I'm going to use staff to help him live independently in the house. Are you going to get your child an apartment of their own and staff it with DDA? Are you going to team up with a couple other parents and maybe buy a 4-bedroom home or something? Or there's just a lot of different options there, and it's going to be very individualized. So nested, NEST-IDD could be another option where they buy the house from you. You take the money that you get from the sale of your house, you put it into a special needs trust for the child. The child lives in the house with a 3 or 5 year lease, and the rent will go up by a little bit every year. That's all between you and Nested, and the child lives there until they die. And you don't have to worry about the upkeep of the house because Nested will have property managers. They'll keep up with all of the groundskeeping, all of that. Make sure you freeze credit for your child. Identity theft is a very, very, very real thing. It's not a question of is your information out there, it's who has your information. There have been so many leaks and hacks. Everybody's information is out there somewhere. So the best thing you can do to protect yourself is freeze your credit on Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. It's very easy to do. I encourage everybody to do it. Decide if they want to do additional education. It doesn't have to be college. In Colorado, they have something called TAC, Teaching the Autism Community Trades. Very often, some of our individuals with disabilities would do very well with a trade because plumbing, carpentry, they all follow rules. They're all going to be the same way. Water's always going to flow to the path of least resistance. Same thing with electricity. So once somebody learns that, it could be a very good path for them to work. It doesn't have to just be IT. There's a lot of demand out there for the trades, and that's never going to go away. So, something to consider. And then when they get older, again, working with doors, vocational services, what's their personal life going to look like? When you think about if you have a child who doesn't have a disability, or think about what you were like when you were in your 20s, how much was mom and dad involved? I know as parents, we want to be there for our kids, and we can be there, but we need to give them their space. My son is going to be 23 this year. We live like roommates. I really don't see very much of him. He's got his bedroom. He does his own laundry. He'll give me a grocery list. We're working on getting him to where he can do his own groceries. And that, to me, that is age appropriate, right? I mean, when I was 22, 23, I didn't really do much of anything with my parents. So I think sometimes it's the parents that have a harder time letting go, because it's easy to feel like, oh, our kid could never be independent because ... fill in the blanks. Instead, I think I would challenge all of you to do would be when you say my child couldn't be independent, instead of saying because, use the word without. What supports do you need to put in place to help your child be independent of you? They may never be 100% independent, but what can they do to be independent of you? Because in most cases, you know, we are not going to outlive our kids, and it's something, you know, nobody wants to talk about. It's not something I'm really big on thinking about, but it's a reality, and we have to plan for that reality. We have to plan for, have we done everything we can do to help our child be successful when we're no longer able to provide for them, either because we're no longer around or just because we've gotten to the point where physically and mentally we just don't have the capacity, or, and there should be no shame in this, or because we've reached a stage in our lives where we want to go and have fun in retirement, and we want to do stuff for ourselves, and there should be no shame. You know, parents shouldn't shame each other if that's what they want to do. You know, every family is going to be different, you know, but we need everybody needs to plan for what they're going to do, what's their child going to do when they're not around, and that goes into the legacy planning. It's especially if you have other children. You know, the solution of I'm just going to leave everything to my child without disabilities and they'll take care of my disabled child, that's not fair to anybody. And it's candidly, in my opinion, it's the lazy person's way out. Set up the special needs trust, make sure that the child without disabilities wants to be involved, and get them involved as much as they want to be involved. You know, bring them in with the estate planning, get them involved with the estate planning, make them the trust protector, talk to the attorney, you know, involve them, but don't assume that they're going to want to do it all. That's, I mean, they may want to get married, they may want to have a life of their own, you know, things like that. And then what's going to happen for health insurance after age 26? Does your company allow you to keep your child on your health insurance? Federal government, the answer is yes. Montgomery County teachers, the answer is yes. It could be the same with military, yes, if you retire from the military. There is, you know, have you looked at your health insurance, especially if you're a state, federal, or county employee, and looked into it to see, can I keep my child in my health insurance after I retire? Is there any other benefits that my child can get from my pension or from my retirement, you know, that I need to build into my plan? These are all things that you can do, but I don't think many people ask because they don't know to ask. So I hope I didn't offend anybody or you know, come across a little too harsh. I truly believe we are not doing ourselves any favors and we're not doing our children any favors if our plan is to take care of the kids for the rest of their lives, because I don't think we're going to be able to do it. So that's my presentation. Thank you all for listening. We've got 10 more minutes for questions. You guys have been asking some phenomenal questions. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate how engaged you guys have been.
Well, thank you, Eric, as always. Very helpful, lots of great information. And we'll go ahead and address a few additional questions that we've had here over the past few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. I've got a few closing comments as I try to do. So thank you again for your time. It's great to see you again. Hopefully we'll see each other in person sometime again soon.
Hopefully.
That would be great. So, okay, questions. If both parents are working full-time, would the child get SSDI on the highest wage earner?
Yes.
Okay. Would you please repeat what you said about Medicare and Medicaid for a child receiving SSDI?
Sure. If a child is duly eligible, meaning the child qualifies for Medicaid and Medicare. Well, let me back up. You qualify for Medicare 24 months after you start receiving Social Security disability insurance. you'll automatically be enrolled in Medicare. You don't have to do anything. That is an automatic approval. So you start receiving it, let's say in January of 2023. In February of 2025, 25 months later, you will start receiving Medicare. When you're dual eligible and you're receiving Medicare and Medicaid, Medicaid pays for everything Medicare does not pay for. Medicaid will also pay for the premiums of Medicare Part B. So Medicaid is the payor of last resort. It only pays after everything else is paid. So I think that's what they were looking for is you know that brief overview.
Okay, thank you. Next question. My husband is currently the only one working because we have a child with moderate to severe autism. Is my lack of employment going to hurt us when providing for our child in the future?
I don't think so. I mean, again, this is where you would want to talk to somebody, an insurance agent, financial advisor about, setting up. Well, you talk to the attorney to set up a special needs trust. Before you talk to the attorney, make sure you know how you're going to fund the trust. And that's where you would get the life insurance. An insurance agent can give you more details, but a lot of times, families that have tight budgets, I'll see them doing a second eye policy, and an insurance agent can talk to you in much more detail about this. But basically, it's a one insurance policy that insures two people and pays out when the second person dies. It's going to be less expensive. It's going to give you the opportunity to provide for your child, but it should not, you not working should not negatively impact your child down the road. I mean, in fact, I think your child's probably lucky to have you taking care of them. Just know that when your child turns 18, they can apply for SSI, and when the child ages out of school, you should be working with DDA and getting supports in place so you can start stepping back.
Very good answer. Thank you. Next question. Eric said ticket to work and some kind of pass. Could he repeat what that pass was? Also, does he recommend any benefits counselors in or around Annapolis, Maryland?
So PASS is going to be Plan to Achieve Self-Support. I think that's what it stands for, PASS. The Social Security website will tell you for sure. And then the benefits counselors I've done the most work with are going to be, what the heck's her name? I'll forward you an email, Jeff. I'm blanking on their name right now, but there is a group I like, and I'll make sure I get Jeff the benefits counselors.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just jot that down. Okay, so those are all of our questions that we have now. We have a number of comments saying very helpful, and thank you very much to you, Eric. So do appreciate it.
Awesome.
Appreciate your time. So what I'll say now, again, also now would be your time to get any final questions in, please, if you do have them. For those of you that don't know, I try to send out a comprehensive email with some links and information after each webinar that we do here at our Elville webinar series. And actually, we do have one more question. Thank you for that. Before I wrap up here. And that question is, I just lost it. I lost it because everybody's writing in about what a great presentation you offered, Eric.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, what happens if already on Medicare with SSDI and I turn 65? Do you still need to apply again?
No, once you're on Medicare, you're on Medicare. You shouldn't have to apply again.
Okay. And or if you come off of Medicare before 65 and then turn 65 later.
Yeah, you would probably, if you came off it, you would have to probably, I would think you'd have to apply again at 65.
Okay. Do you know of a good financial planner in Frederick, Maryland?
Have them email me and I'll send a couple names out.
Okay. You will post the recording of this. Yes, we always post the recording of this on our YouTube page. I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, and those are all of our questions for the moment. So I do try to send a good message out with a lot of information that'll be hopefully helpful to you. I will send a link to the video. We always record all of our webinars here at the Elville webinar series. I will send a link to our calendar of events for our webinar series. And I will also send some links out to some special needs planning webinars we've offered here at Elville and Associates recently with the slide decks, including the guardianship webinar we did back in December, information about Maryland Able that Kelly Nelson, the outreach coordinator with Maryland Able, did. She's wonderful, almost as good as Eric. Maybe it's a tie, so they're both really good. We've known Kelly for about 5 or 6 years and done many presentations with her. She's a wealth of knowledge. Anything you need to know about Maryland Able, I'll include her contact information too, so you can reach out to her. She won't mind. Also, I'll send out our global presentation about what families need to know about planning for a loved one with special needs. I'll send that presentation out as well. As far as our webinar series, if you're interested in other types of presentations, this Friday, Understanding Purposes and Uses of Irrevocable Trusts, Friday at 10 o'clock with our managing principal and lead attorney, Stephen Elville. We actually have 115 people signed up for that webinar, so I think we kind of hit a nerve with that topic. That is our largest webinar ever here. There's a lot of different irrevocable trusts in special needs planning, so that might be something that you want to jump on. You can go onto our website and register if you didn't get an invitation for that. If you're on this webinar, you probably did get an invitation. Wednesday, February 9th, Understanding Estate and Trust Administration, also with Steve. And we're going to be continuing, lastly, our wellness series, which has been very popular with Aging Life Care Manager Ellen Platt and Dr. Michelle Fritsch on Tuesday the 15th at 1:30. We're going to be talking about finding your purpose. Probably going to be tweaking the title a little bit, but that's going to be the topic of discussion that day. And I'm looking forward to that, as I always do our wellness series discussions. So that's going to about do it. That's going to about do it. I think we have all of our questions answered, and it is 11:59. And I think we're going to go ahead and call it a successful presentation. So thank you again, Eric. We appreciate it. Look forward to having you back sometime soon in the future. And thank you to all our attendees for being here. We couldn't do it without you. And have a wonderful day, everybody. All right.